Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Art is the practice of taking the mundane happenings of life and turning it into theater. You know, Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm are two great examples of this. Two shows that are famously about nothing, but they take the trivialities of life and they turn it into art that makes us both laugh and relate. Now, in long-term relationships, there are no shortage of mundane moments, infuriating moments, and all the other moments in between that can be dismissed as forgettable or necessary evils that you have to endure. But our guest today, Madelyn Moon, encourages us to take these relationship moments and make art out of them, just like Larry David would, to bring more life, play, and heat into the relationship with your woman. And fellas, this might be a good episode to invite your ladies to listen along with you. Now, who is Madelyn Moon? Madelyn is a guide for women seeking to discover, claim, and own all of her inherently wild and artistic sides so that she can express her true self in all areas of life, especially her love life. Madelyn is the author of the recently released Artist of Love, the modern woman's guidebook to unleashing her creativity, deepening her relationships, and becoming the leading actor in her own life. And Madelyn has been on the show before with one of our most popular episodes of all time, 5 Ways That Men Lose Credibility with Women. That one you may want to listen to, guys. I'm going to link that at the top of the show notes. And in this episode, Madelyn defines what it means to create art out of the mundane and frustrating moments in relationships. We'll talk about how a man who knows how to create art out of these moments becomes a more trustworthy man. How an artful physical touch with your woman can calm her nervous system in a heated moment. This one's big and quite simple if you know what you're doing. And how a lack of defining a shared purpose for your relationship will lead you to ending up in a relationship whose default purpose is merely staying together. And then finally, Madelyn finishes off with 4 ways to create art in your relationship. Sit back and enjoy Loving Your Woman Artfully, featuring Madelyn Moon. Madelyn, after a 3.5-year hiatus from the show, it is so beautiful to have you back on the Great Man Within podcast. And I must remind you that after 320 episodes that we've done now, your episode of 5 Ways That Men Lose Credibility with Women still remains in our top 10 most downloaded of all time.
Wow, that's amazing. That makes me so happy. And I can't believe it's been over 3 years since we last did this.
Right?
That blows my mind.
So much wisdom. And you know what? We'll see you in 3.5 years from now. This is very
great.
Top 10. How do we wait 3.5 years? I mean, if we had any kind of smarts to us, we brought Madelyn on way sooner.
Come on, guys.
Come on.
Madelyn said a couple of times, yeah, I'm working on some stuff. I got this book that's coming out, which we're going to be
that's right.
talking about a little bit today, called The Artist of Love. And what's beautiful about Madelyn, your work and the book that you've written is you do work exclusively for women in love and relationships. And one of the things that we've loved to do on this show is bring on women who are leaders of communities of women to kind of give us that inside scoop on what the hell are y'all talking about, right? And what are you complaining about when it comes to men that we need to know about? And so today's episode is really going to be about a deeper dive into what is going on in the minds and hearts of women that come to you for work. And maybe that's a good place for us to start, Madelyn, is just who are the women that come to you for work and what are they looking for? What are they asking for?
I love this question. And I think I've been reflecting on this lately just to see how the women that are drawn to this very niche work find me and what they're really struggling with. And something that I've noticed consistently with a lot of the women who come to learn the artistry of love is they're looking to unleash and unveil their ability to be expressive again. It's very simple because our culture, our society has really installed this kind of like baseline for, I don't know, maybe men as well, but definitely women, of the more expressive you are, the more misinterpreting there can be, the more crazy you can be. So we have a lot of women that have this depth of emotion and feeling and ability to reveal that feeling through eyes, through breath, through sound, through emoting. And they were raised in families that taught them how to have a poker face. Keep your cards close to your heart. And so what I really have come to believe is that women are deeply craving these safe spaces where they can be totally truthful to what they're feeling on the inside and reveal it on the outside. And it feels a little risky to do that in front of a man and to do that in partnership. But what I've also noticed is that's really what men are craving too. They're craving to feel her energy, her truth, her expression. They want that. That's what the masculine often wants, is that energy embodied. What are you feeling, woman? Show me. I want to feel you. And that is really at the heartbeat of what many modern day poker face women are wanting. It's, yes, they want to be seen. Yes, they want to be worshiped. They want to be ravished. They want to be adored. And more than anything, more than being seen, is to be she who must be seen. It's the being of that woman. It's not necessarily about getting anything. It's about finally claiming her right to be expressive, to inhabit her own bodily instrument, to fill it with movement and life and energy. It's like the cherry on top to have someone witness you and love it. But it's really the being it that she's craving to step into.
What's the fear? Why are women that come to you feeling afraid to fully express and instead sit behind that poker face?
Well, there's childhood trauma, definitely childhood trauma of, being a child who's like fully embodied and expressive and being shut down by mommy or daddy, to be called crazy, to be the, sister is the pretty one, you're the goofy one, or whatever that kind of comparison that's created. There's also when you're 13, 14, or 15, where you have these moments of opening and you get called crazy for the first time. Or as you get older, you have these emotions that come up. And something that I've experienced in my own life is being called into question of, why do you feel that way? And being argued with someone giving me logic to all the reasons why I shouldn't feel the way I feel, where I feel a feeling and there does not have to be a reason to why a feeling comes about. But I don't think most people had those tools to know that feelings are just things that pass through. So a lot of us, when we were younger and we were in these moments of conflict with a first love or a second love, and one or the other feels an emotion that comes up and doesn't know how to handle it, and maybe does project it onto their partner, and then their partner deflects it and uses like, here's all the reasons why you shouldn't feel that way and how it's not my fault or my responsibility. And it's really just two people who have no idea what to do with this emotion, this thing that's coming up. It's so simple. It's like, let it come through, let it be blasted through the body. But normally, because we don't know what to do with these emotions, well, a lot of people who haven't learned how to be with the emotion try to make it someone else's problem so that they don't have to fully feel it. If I can just make this emotion coming up in me your responsibility, your fault, then I won't feel embarrassed for feeling this way. It comes from like a deep sense of embarrassment for feeling these things that logically we maybe shouldn't feel.
Yeah, I got really good at doing that, at projecting everything onto my partner. I remember in high school, I was dating this woman named Jenny. I'll never forget this. I was thinking deeply about our relationship in high school and decided to take notes. And I put a bulleted checklist together of all of the things that were wrong with our relationship, none of which had anything to do with me. And I was so proud of myself. I remember walking into our friend's kitchens where we had this meeting of the minds. And I explained to her all the things that was wrong with the relationship as regards to her. And she literally threw me out of the room. Not physically, but like literally threw me out of the room. And I didn't understand what went wrong. So I imagine that's an example of guys, we hear this thing like hold space for the women and the feminine in our lives. I imagine that's not the right way to hold space. But what can we as guys do? How can we hold that space to allow that expression of our feminine partners?
Yeah, there are multiple ways to do this. Firstly, let me make this clear that everything I say has an infinite amount of nuance. No situation is going to be the same. And I'm encouraging every man, every woman who listens to this to dance with what the moment is asking of you. Yes, I'm going to say, like, here are a few things, but also, what does it feel like love is really asking in your circumstance and your situation? Because the first thing that comes to me that I really believe in is container setting for that emotion, right? So, like, say an emotion really wants to come through in your partner, you can, I don't know, for me, one of the things that comes up in relationship that I love to kind of hand over to my partner. It's funny because this is kind of a masculine trait, but my feeling of burden. When I feel really burdened by having house responsibilities, client responsibilities, finance responsibilities, life, like, I want to come to my partner and be like, I just don't know. Like, I just want to let go. We all want this. I'm lost, I'm confused, and I don't want to be responsible. And I've been with partners before who like took that, could see me going through this state of feeling immensely overwhelmed. But instead of them going into, okay, she's tired, so I need to be now fully responsible, that's the man that I am now, he understood that it was just a moment in time. It wasn't forever, but it was a moment where I wanted to be relieved of my burden. One example would be for a partner to invite that exhausted woman to fully express what it feels like to be so fed up with responsibilities. Like, baby, give me a temper tantrum for the next 3 minutes. I want it all. Here are 5 pillows, go crazy. I'm going to witness you and I'm going to ravish you afterwards. Or whatever. Like, give her a space and a moment where you can fully witness her, be with her. It'll pass through. It won't be forever. Right. And on the same time, not everything in life should be in a container. And I think that's also very important, is that not every time it's okay, now we're going to step into 5 minutes of a temper tantrum. So sometimes it's just about, oh, babe, tell me more. You're exhausted. Tell me more. I'm here for you. I've got a few minutes and I just want to listen to what's coming up for you. And just loving her in that space. And I'm speaking to men to give that to women, but also women to give that to men, and to just hear what's underneath the words they're saying, but also listening to the words they're saying. Like, there's probably something happening that's deeper that they're saying, like they're exhausted. And there's probably a very long list of reasons why they're exhausted, but also you don't have to pry in and like, what are all the things going on in your life? Sometimes you just need to be there in that moment. Does that make sense?
The caveat that you gave in the beginning of this was like, dance with the moment, like see what's there. And sometimes it needs a container and allow the temper tantrum to happen, and sometimes not so much. And one of the pieces of advice or direction or insight that you gave us on the last podcast 3.5 years ago was when a man holds a woman physically, like tightly, like, hey, I've got you, as opposed to what I did often, which was this like very loose, wishy-washy sort of feel. And so I took that advice, and with my current partner, I did that. And a couple of times she looked at me and she's like, why are you grabbing me so hard? Like, what's going on? And at other times I could tell she really responded to it. And so I had to learn that caveat in real time of like, when is it appropriate to like really hold hard and hold tight? And when is that just not the right thing to do? So I love that. I love that advice of dance with the moment, right? There's no rule set here per se, but here's the options. Here's the directions we can go.
And Madelyn, going back to one of the things you said about early on in a girl's life, she has this first experience of being told that she's crazy for having these emotions. And I think the parallel for men is crazy is for women what weakness is for men, in the sense of like, every man has that deep rooted fear of, I can't be seen as weak. I can't be perceived as weak. And therefore, that's where the emotional armor, the inner armor that Brian and I talk about, goes up inside of a man. And behind that wall is where all these emotions that might look, quote, weak, go to die, or they go to get stuck, create a lot of internal consternation, which leads to compulsive behaviors, outbursts, withdrawal, all sorts of other things. And what you're saying with women is this thing of don't be the crazy woman with the emotions that are running everywhere, creates kind of like this, either the shutdown this like stuck behind a gray charcoal suit. I'm just thinking about all the, the people I used to work with in financial services in a particular way. And what I'm starting to understand, and I'd love you to weigh in on this, is when a relationship moves past its honeymoon phase, and the honeymoon phase is electrified by this energy. Everything's new, it's sexy, it's exciting. And once that, Madeline's like doing a little shimmy over there. You could feel the energy in her body. She's looking up at the stars.
I love the honeymoon phase.
Who doesn't? I love me a good honeymoon phase.
Great.
and you know why? Because you don't have to work for it. It happens and it's natural. And we're like, oh my God, it's going to be this way forever.
You still have your projections, like of who that person is.
Right? They have no flaws.
Sorry,
they're flawless and they're amazing and they're the one. And then that ends. And you shift into the longer term relationship where that energy, it doesn't flow as freely and there's a little bit more work involved. And what I'm hearing you say, and maybe you can correct me, I'm wrong on this. If we have two sets of people in this relationship, we're talking about heterosexual. If the men are armored up emotionally, the women are suppressed emotionally, where's the energy exchange in that?
Right, exactly. And in my book, there's one chapter that's very short that I wrote called Going First. It's about being the first to open. And when I say open, I either mean bringing the energy back, being the one to peel back the armor, even through one sentence. That's a really deep sentence of, I miss you. Has a lot of depth to it. It's short, it's sweet. I miss you. Where are you? I want to feel you. That is a way that she reveals a little bit more of what's going on within her, or he takes down a little bit of his armor when he gets armored up of like, I can't miss, like that's weak or whatever. So it's an art form to be able to feel into what the moment needs, what the connection needs. When you start feeling like, oh, this partnership feels drab, or it's starting to feel dull, or maybe he just can't take me deep, or maybe she just like won't have the capacity to keep meeting me with where I'm at. And you start kind of evidence accumulating, getting all the evidence of why they can't meet you. Anytime you start to go into this evidence gathering period, it's a beautiful sign to pause and ask yourself, how can you create art out of this thing that's happening within your relationship that you're gifted enough to see that something is happening that's not so good, not so healthy? It's not a bad thing that you're seeing all these signs of places that you need work. It's an invitation. Are you going to take that invitation and lean in? Or are you going to lean out because you have, quote, fallen out of love, and you're going to go find somebody else to ride that honeymoon roller coaster with, and then go through the same samsara, the same loop all over again. And then you're going to start evidence gathering. It's those moments of evidence gathering that you're just being seen. Oh, here's a place to lean in. Oh, here's a place we can create more art. Oh, here's a place where resentment is building. And that resentment is an invitation to have a resentment sharing party where we drink champagne and talk about our resentments together.
Yeah. So you've mentioned the creating art out of these moments. And this is your special gift. This is what the book is about, right? What does it mean to the uninitiated to create art out of these moments in life that cause us anger, frustration, the boredom, the classic trope of he's not taking out the garbage, all that stuff? What do you mean by creating art out of these moments? And then why does that lead to magic inside of a relationship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this question. Firstly, I'll say that the definition of art for me is massive. So many things to me are art. Art can be a revealing of your heart's truth. Art can be an actual creation that you make. Art can be a ceremony that you give to your beloved to reunite your vows. Art can be some comedy you kind of throw in a moment of a little bit of tension to break it up and to tussle with your partner. But ultimately, art it's turning water into wine. And I've always had a very deep connection with wine. And I have concluded that I was no. It's to me, it's always been this marvelous symbol of alchemy. And I've just had a very deep connection to all the gods that have turned water into wine, and just like, wow, this is this thing that has blossomed and turned into this libation that connects you with spirit. And I think that in relationship, we are given all these opportunities to either go from bad to great, bad to good, good to amazing, all these different places in the spectrum. And art is the bridge. So if you and your partner are starting to separate more and more and more and more, and you're starting to have tension, art is what takes you into that connection from distancing to coming back into connection. Art is how you get there. And it's also how you go from being a fucking amazing couple into a extraordinary couple. It can be used in all these different ways. So one thing I'd like to point out is where all of this work started was I used to create, I still do a little bit, not as much, but I would create these reels where I would do a take one and a take two of a couple who was fighting about something. So like take one would be the passive aggressive way to handle running out of milk. You know, like here's how a typical couple may get into a pissy argument about someone not buying milk, or a pissy argument about, you know, looking too hot, going to the gym, and there's jealousy issues or something. And then I would show a take two of how to tussle with your partner around it, how to gift your partner through that conflict, how to actually create that water into wine bridge where there's a moment of tension that can turn into something beautiful. And the book is full of ideas, but one idea would be like, I have done this a couple different times in partnership where there would be something coming up where my partner would be perhaps angry that I did something or said something. And I would find a way to, instead of slam the door and be like, fuck off, you know, because I'm angry, like figure it out on your own, I would lean in. And one of the ways that I've really played with is my eroticism and leaning in. So actually first feeling my partner's deep sadness underneath the trigger. There's something happening within him that he's sad. He's afraid. He's scared. I can connect with that part with him. I may not have an easy time connecting with the part of him that's the reaction, but I can connect with the part of him that is the young little boy that is afraid that the trap door is about to open underneath him and we're about to be broken up, or something he did was wrong and he's about to fall through. I can feel that part of him. So when I connect with that, I can think of what would be a sweet way to connect with that part of him to let him know I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And it could be putting on my sexiest outfit and creating a sacred space in the living room lit with candles and inviting him in, actually walking him through the door and putting him in his seat, where I then put on a song that has something to do in the lyrics around what the fight was about. Maybe about jealousy, or about like, you drive me crazy, but I love you, baby, or like something like that. And then do some sort of dance for him as I whisper in his ears all the things that I love about him, or all the things that I want to destroy about him that get in the way of our love. But either way, I'm gifting him with my body, with my breath, with my energy. I'm not running away. I'm not hiding. I'm saying, here, I'm with you, baby. And I'm going to like shred this thing to pieces if you don't shape up. You know, like the end of Grease, you got to shape up, do. Like even that could be a song that you do some kind of dance with. She's an amazing example. That's my favorite movie for that reason. It is this beautiful example of this couple that kept missing the mark on each other. And at the end, she, in the name of love, put on leather, held a cigarette, and danced for him at the same time that she told him, you've got to shape up because I need a man that I can count on. And she was giving him this dance in the embodiment of the flavor he loved.
Yep.
I didn't know I was going to go there, but I love Grease so much. And she's just such a prime example of someone who's like this good girl who, in the name of love, embodied a part of her, not necessarily just for him, but for love itself.
Madelyn, wow, you are speaking to my heart here. Now, if my partner mid-argument broke out into sexy lingerie and whispered into my ear, I might be, I will be thoroughly confused at the very least. But, you know, going back to the honeymoon phase, I mean, I dated a number of women for about 8 months. And what would happen is I would gather a ton of evidence, like you said, towards like ramping up to month 7 or month 8. And we would get into an argument and I'd be like, I'm out. That's it. Like, I'm done. The evidence is there. We're arguing and it's over now. Fast forward, I got married 2 weeks ago. And in our vows, we didn't talk about all the bliss. We didn't talk about all the goodness that was there and that was evident But the moments that we look back on in our vows were the moments where we had some sort of conflict. We had some sort of issue that came up, and we worked with it, and we came together on it. Now, I never had thought about that as artistry in any kind of way. And as a matter of fact, before you giving us that beautiful rendition, I would have said, how do I show up into those arguments or into those points of conflict? And I would have said, I'm putting on my relationship armor. Like, I'm here for the battle. And it feels so much better to think about that as art, as something that's co-creative. It's something that's like we're creating together as opposed to get through. So that, for me, that idea of making art or being an invitation to create together, oh my God, like that's a total game changer for me. So I may not play Better Shape Up, but I can find my way of doing that, of like, what is that co-creative spirit in the conflict?
Yes. I also want to add that I just gave an example of eroticism, like putting on sexy lingerie. And I do not want to leave it there, because that's only one tiny flavor, and it's not always the most realistic, and it's not always the most serving, because sometimes we need to get some actual words out. We need to make some eye contact and to share our truths. And that's a deep form of art. And so I've listed 4 of the different ways that you can really create art as simply as I can. It's like an infinite amount of ways, but there's eroticism, there is playfulness, which is like comedy, which would be like tussling, like pulling her hair a little bit when she gets sassy and saying, don't be sassy, and like, it's like a way to kind of polarize the moment, but you have to be very careful when you do that. If she's trying to really tell you something and you just start pulling her hair and say, don't be sassy, that's not going to go very well. But if it's a moment where it's a little comment and it's a little passive aggressive, instead of saying, don't be passive aggressive with me, stop that. That's not a good way to work with her accidental passive aggressiveness, because she's probably not trying to be malicious. If you're not the one being passive aggressive, but you see that passive aggressiveness is starting to kind of bubble up, that's when you can play a little bit and create art out of your own trigger from her passive aggressiveness, rather than demanding her not to be that way in that moment, because what she did is already done. She already said the comment, and you can kind of play with it from there, rather than being like, oh, my woman's being disrespectful. If you can see what she's doing and you can let it not phase you, you can create a little bit of art with a little bit of hair pulling. And it takes agility. It takes knowing what the moment is asking. Maybe she's going to light up from that and be like, oh, my baby's like, and nothing fazed him. Or maybe she'll be like, what I'm saying is really important. And so you got to adjust to the moment to really feel in, okay, this is not a time to pull hair, or that worked.
Well, I just want to emphasize the importance of what you're saying about her feeling that she can't faze you. Yeah, that was one of the key concepts I remember reading from The Way the Superior Man and David Data, right? Like, she's testing you unconsciously all the time to know, is she safe? Because if she can knock you off your game, if one little sly comment about, not cleaning up the bathroom or leaving the toilet seat up, all those old things that guys do, if she can knock you off just by a little wayward comment, then you've proven that you can easily be knocked off your game. And therefore, she can't feel that when you go out in the world, that you won't just as easily be knocked off your game by a life circumstance or at work or wherever. So these moments that you're talking about, where the passive aggressive comment that she makes, instead, you could kind of play with her, maybe pull her hair in the right moments, like you're saying, and say, that was sassy. She can say, oh, he felt that, like, my upset, but also could alchemize that upset into something where we can maybe even talk about it, or take a little bit of the air out of that so we can meet versus like create space between each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm going to say something else around this, because I love that idea. On one hand, I really like this concept and idea that she's always testing you unconsciously. And I've experienced something around this that drove me a little bit nuts in previous relationship dynamics of students of this work, where it felt like my masculine partner assumed the position that I was always testing him unconsciously. And instead of, oh, she's testing me unconsciously, I'm going to play with her, it's, oh, the feminine is testing me unconsciously over and over and over. So I get really hesitant around this word unconsciously for men to assume women are testing without her realizing it. It might be true in some instances, and other instances, it's actually something that can lead men to not trust her because her testing is unconscious.
Right. Yeah.
It kind of feels like you're infantilizing, I think I'm saying that right, infantilizing her. She may know what she's doing, and she may not actually be testing you at all. She may just be in her own world having a bad day. I think that that concept can serve in some ways, and it also can be bad for both, because then he's like, I'm always being tested.
Right.
You know, if he thinks he's always being tested, it's going to be over time very challenging for a masculine embodied man to just be normal, because he's always going to either fail or pass a test.
Yeah.
And if he takes on the stance that she's not even aware she's testing, he's going to feel like he's in relationship with a child at times. And it's insidious and it's sneaky and it's unconscious. And this weird dynamic starts to build up where everything she does is a task that she's not awoken to, and he's got to be the one responsible to be awake to her testing. And then over time, he gets resentful because the feminine is always testing him. And then before you know it, he's projecting. The masculine can start projecting the belief that he's always being tested.
Right.
And that's a scary position, because maybe you're not being tested. Maybe all she wants is to, like, you know, love you. And this idea that you're constantly being tested is starting to become the unnecessary issue in the partnership. I'm not saying every man does this or every woman is awake to her own testing. It's just another perspective I'd like to add to the conversation before it becomes a problem that we find our society back in, when we're really just trying to find our way back to love. And maybe it could eventually become something that gets in the way of love.
Yeah. Thank you for that perspective, Madelyn. I could absolutely see how it could go down that path. I have not heard that perspective before, so thanks for adding that in. And I kind of interjected here while you were midway through your 4 ways to create art, and you talked about eroticism and playfulness. I'm eager to hear. Some may say earnest to hear what the other two are.
Earnest. So the other two, the next one is raw heart. And this one for me is actually my favorite. I think the other two, eroticism and playfulness, take a little bit of premeditation. Like in a moment of a deep trigger, you're not going to go into put on lingerie in the middle of it, but you can think about it like, oh, I want to bring in my truth and I want to do it in a way that is gifting. Like you can kind of plan an evening. And I think playfulness, like the tugging of the hair, that can happen in the moment. And sometimes it does take a little bit of premeditation of like, how can we play with this trigger? Maybe we need to go to a nude beach and run around and play music together and just like break up the tension in our partnership. And then raw heart, though, is when you want to say all these things, like a story, like, I'm afraid that you're pulling away, and maybe you're pulling away because I said that thing the other day and now you're being this way with me and it's hurting my feelings and da. Raw heart, instead of doing all of that, instead of using your many sentences and words to explain what you're feeling, you use the body to reveal what you're feeling. Pull back your shoulders and you say, ouch, something so simple, ouch. Or you reveal through your eyes that pain that's trying to come through, the sadness, instead of like, you know, hardening up and leaving the room, you decide to show your beloved what's coming through. I was talking about this the other day with a friend of how if you're with a partner, men, who is very deeply in her feminine, which means she always wants more love. She feels a lot of feelings. She's expressive. She wants more, like more of you. You're with a feminine being. And, you know, her heart is very sensitive. And there are layers to coming into that sensitivity more and more for every woman on this journey. Because again, we're peeling back the layers. But when she starts practicing and going into the deep end, you're going to just witness a lot of emotion that comes through in times where you may not get it. For example, if you're making love and you don't want to ejaculate and you kind of push her off, or you tell her, get off, or the sex ends jarringly, maybe she's not going to show you, but that's going to hurt a part of her heart. She was just deeply connected with you. And yes, we got to do the thing we got to do. We got to make sure that we're not making babies if we don't want to make babies. So yes, there is a sense of urgency that maybe you need a hop off or something like that. And her heart might break having to disconnect from you so jarringly. And that same level of like, oh, we were just connected. And like, maybe that touches something deep in her to like hurry and have to end the sex because we were so connected may make her heart hurt. And she may feel that same level of deep pain when you look at your phone during dinner instead of be connected to her. Or if you make her breakfast and you keep consistently burning the toast. You know, it's like these little things hurt her heart because to her, it's a feeling of being disconnected. Like, don't you see me and my toast and how burnt it is, like day after day after day. And there's like a depth of feeling that you may not understand, but to her, it means something. It means a lack of consciousness. To like end sex early, end a phone call early, jarringly, without some sort of, we're going to disconnect now. I love you. And like, you know, some kind of slower come down. It can be jarring to a feminine being's heart. And what I teach is women, helping women how to learn how to reveal that raw heart, not in a way that's like, it's your fault for ending sex fast, but instead of, ow, like revealing the emotion that comes through, whether it's sex ending early or toast being burnt, like learning how to just own your feeling and not make it his responsibility to, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to change anything, but she has to learn how to reveal. And then when she's revealing, you can really see your impact that you're making on her and how you maybe want to step in with even more consciousness and with even more love and attention to detail.
What's the role that a masculine partner can play to also help allow for that? You know, if I see my partner, for example, in story mode and using all the words like you described before, but I'm not really connecting, all I'm hearing is the story. Is there a way that we can guide, or what does that look like for us guys?
I'll say for me, and again, every woman is different. For me, what's really supported me is physical touch on my body. The moment I start to go into story or I start talking, I'll say it this way. Most of the time when I start to go into story and I'm doing a lot of talking, I'm not being touched. And in the moment where I have a hand on my leg, my thigh, or thighs intertwined and body to body, really close, there needs to be some sort of embodiment piece when two people are going into story. It softens the heart automatically. Yab yum, you know, sitting together and having some kind of moment of physical touch, physical contact, especially if you do, for example, I'm sure y'all are familiar with dialogues, like imago dialogues. And when this happened, I felt this. Your partner says, when this happened, you felt this. And you kind of repeat each other. That's a really wonderful way to share the story coming up for you and have it heard and have it empathized. But the piece that one of my teachers, Don Cartwright, really supported me with was realizing dialogues without physical touch kind of perpetuate the tension. Dialogues and communicating with physical touch softens everything. Again, not every woman is the same, but I would encourage everyone to try to add a little bit more touch in the middle of sharing any kind of story that's coming up. And that's one way. I'll also add eye contact, deep breath. You know, there's something that happens when a man's so deeply with you, with eye contact, with breathing in unison with you, that does something to the system. And there's also a time and a place for story, you know, and I think that story is okay. It's actually really kind of scary when you're not allowed to have a story. It feels like something's taken from you. So there's a way to be like, what's your story? What's the story coming up for you? Let each other share the story. Let him share the story. Let her share the story. Be curious about the story. Where is that coming from? What did I do that helped create this story? What would help disintegrate this story? What do you need? Tell me more.
This is important, Madelyn, because in our, the men's group that Brian and I were in for many years together, the intention of the men's group was to work on our emotions and feelings. And, you only get like a small period of time. Like there's, 8 or 9 guys in the group. You only get about 8 minutes to go into the whole process. And there were these periods of time where we had to skip the story and just go right into the feelings, right? So like the story of my mother's dealing with dementia, or I'm dealing with Lyme disease, or some shitty thing happened in my business. Like you have to eliminate getting into any of that just to go right into the feeling of I'm angry, I'm upset. And when there was no space for the story, I felt like Brian didn't even know what I was upset about. And like there was some disconnection. I would want him to know. The flip side to that is spending all 8 minutes talking about the story, not getting into the emotions. And I think this is like where a lot of men who are listening can relate to this idea of when I do try to hold space for my feminine partner, there's a 20-minute tidal wave of story. And I have a hard time getting disconnected. She hasn't taken a breath. I don't know what she wants from me. You know, I'm just feeling a lot of rage. So in those moments where like the story just seems to be the never ending thing that's coming out, how would you guide a masculine being to allow some space for that story, but then also to lead into, or maybe invite into a space of, okay, well, what's going on under there?
Yeah, well, again, that's why I really love the dialogues, because if for anyone who's not familiar, this is what it looks like. You sit across from each other and you get to take your own turn. Whoever is the most triggered probably should go first because they'll just be waiting for their turn and they won't really hear what the other person's saying. So who's ever the most activated can share. But the thing I love about it is that you can only do bite-sized pieces because the other person needs to repeat it.
Right.
So if I was like mad at you, Dominic, I would be like, that time that you picked up your pen and you were writing down a note, I felt like you weren't listening to me, really upset me because you weren't looking at me. You'd need to repeat it almost verbatim. So I can't go too long. You have to be like, okay, so that time I picked up a pen. Is that right? And then if you got something wrong, I would say, no, you missed the part where I said you weren't eye gazing with me. And then you'd say, okay, you were mad because I was not eye gazing with you. Is that right? And I would say, yes. And then you'd say, is there more? Yes, there is, Dominic.
Yeah.
And then I'll share something in the next
so
piece.
much more.
And then there's a certain time normally where you've said it all, you've reached your cap, but me sharing, I feel seen because you literally had to repeat verbatim what I said. And it's back and forth. So it's not just you listening to me all day.
Right.
And the part after that is empathy. So after I've said it and you've repeated it, you empathize with it. Like, okay, I can see how that would feel really jarring to the heart for me to break eye contact. I can see how when this thing happened, you felt really misunderstood. So then you share maybe like 3 empathies. And when you're finished with sharing empathies, you can say, is there anything that you wanted me to acknowledge you for? And then she has a moment to say, I wanted to be acknowledged for this thing also. And then you switch.
Right.
So then it's his turn. So that's important that it's always both people. There's a nice structure to it. So it's not just going on and on and on. And again, when you add the physical touch piece, the heart rates come down because there's touch, there's connection. You can actually like feel the embodiment of love still here. I think those are really, really supportive ways to actually share your truth, be heard, receive empathy, and it feel equal because both partners get that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great, Madelyn. That's it. If someone wanted to do a deeper dive on that, it's a Mago dialogue that you just offered.
Yes, the book is called Getting the Love You Want.
Oh, by Harville Hendrix?
Yeah, Harville Hendrix. Yeah, that's great. I mentioned that work in my book as well because it's just been so pivotal to me.
What's that fourth way, that fourth and final way?
The fourth way is devotion. And devotion is really something that encompasses the bigger picture of what am I devoted to in this trigger? Am I devoted to being right? Am I devoted to winning? Am I devoted to love? And devotion is this consistent calling back into the heart. When you get triggered or activated, devotion is what pulls you back into your strong spine and soft heart. And it also devotion requires you to slow the fuck down. You got to slow down to be in devotion. You can't be running on autopilot and be in devotion at the same time because devotion is asking you to tune into what the moment needs. And so for this one, it's one of the more like abstract ways to create art because it's going to shift. Wherever your devotion is, it's probably with love itself, but what love is asking is going to be such a dance in the moment of how do I reveal my devotion to this person, to our partnership in this moment, in this trigger. What is the way to do that now?
Yeah, one of the points you make in the book that I thought was really helpful is you have to understand what you're actually devoted to. And in the book, this quote where you said, most people are just trying to make it to forever together. many of us have this definition of a successful relationship as we didn't break up. We died married. So most people are just trying to make it forever together, so much so to the point that they stop actively choosing each other. And if you're devoted only to longevity of relationship, then you're going to eat a lot of shit sandwiches over the course of that relationship and probably a lot of resentment. And we've seen plenty of relationships meet that fate. What you're talking to is this conscious choosing of devotion to love, conscious choosing of I'm choosing me and what's true to my heart, and I'm choosing us. You're choosing yourself and you're choosing me and you're choosing us. That devotion then moment by moment can inform like what you're talking about, where there's an argument about the finances or how to parent the kids or whose responsibility is to do whatever tonight. That devotion, that North Star that you've set out together then can inform that moment by moment. How do we respond?
Yeah. And I think to know that you have to have these really honest conversations in your partnership and often about what are you doing? What are you doing together? Why are you together? Like, why really? And I think so many people don't think to do that. They're just like, I want to feel love. You want to feel love. We have a spark. Let's feel love together and just keep going and not talk about like the actual root chakra of our work together. And I think every partnership you're creating it. It's you and them, and you're creating a third entity. And that third entity has to have a purpose. I don't think it can just be to be together. Like, why? A great thing to be devoted to is to be together to make life outside the house easier. That's fine. Like, if you partner up together to actually be each other's partners and do life together so that, when you leave the house, it's easier because you got someone by your side to help you, then that can help inform that you need to be there for each other. Like, if you're in a partnership where one or both of you are not actually putting down the work phone to be there for your partner in a moment where their car broke down, or to help schedule things for each other, or help make dinner and like pitch in. I've been in relationships like that where the actual living part of life to make life easier wasn't really there because we were living our two separate lives. Like, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, we'll live in our separate houses. The purpose of that relationship was not to make life easier. The purpose was to do deep emotional dharma work. And that was very clear for us. Your devotion can shift. Like, my devotion now is I want a partner that is going to help make life easier. I want an actual partnership where we can do life and make it easier for each other and go into those higher realms and do the dharmic ancestral lineage healing work together so that we can create a beautiful angel, blissful baby that then will go out into the world and create this change. These kinds of things can help you, like you were saying, inform how you navigate certain triggers. It's like, do we really need to go into the spiral of who is right and who is wrong about this thing when we're together to make this child and make a better future? Like, knowing that you're coming together with someone for a future life or a current life that's in the belly or something like that can give you so much more perspective on how big is this thing really. So, and not to say that you need a child in order to, I know I'm using that example a few times, but it can also be that we're coming together to heal childhood wounds, right? Like, we have childhood wounds around what love really means, and we're here to be there for each other and to heal those wounds and to teach each other's nervous system what love really is. Right. That can help inform you in a fight.
Right on.
Madelyn, you've given us so much good advice. I know you've literally written an entire book on this. And Dominic and I often talk about how the feminine beings in our life have given us education and given us books and called us higher. Mm. And oftentimes that's been like the big pivot points in our journey, in our internal discovery of ourselves. I've also been suggested to read some books in a different way that feels very much like, hey, you're bad. Like, you're not doing something well. Like, why don't you read this book and come up to speed on how you should be? And I got to tell you, those two things are really, really different. So I would love to hear from you about this book and like, what's a way that a man can give this book to a partner where it feels like the former, not the latter?
you're such an artist, baby. I saw this book and I thought of you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that I would say for women towards men. It's like, you're a good man, baby. I saw this and I thought of you. You're just pointing out that this reminds you of somebody because this is who they are in their heart. And hopefully that's truthful too. Like hopefully you feel that way about your partners when you're with them. You see the best in them and you can feel the best in them. So Artist of Love is a book for the modern day women who are craving to become the leading actresses in their own life, in their own non-acting life, take up space, be expressive, deepen their relationships through artistry and play and eroticism and their raw truth and devotion. All this multitude, a chandelier of ways to be woman. And this book is very clearly about breaking out of boxes, about taking that cardboard box that life and parents and religion and culture has tried to put you in and putting it through a sacred shredder and watching the cardboard pieces fly as you become the woman that you are and defining the feminine in the way you do. Nobody can tell a woman how to be feminine. And that's really what I've wanted to do with this book, is giving every single woman permission to discover her own version of the feminine and claim it and own it in a world full of teachers and workshops and courses telling women how to be women. It's only up to the woman to decide. And so, yeah, I think this is a wonderful book for men to gift to their partners, only to highlight what's already there, only to help, sharpen that craft, because it will free her, not to make her better, but to free her, to help her.
Yeah. And that's the energy of the book, Madelyn, right? I mean, I've gotten through maybe about half of it before we started recording here. And the energy is not, you're broken, here's how to fix it. It's very much like, here's who you are, and here's how to unlock these other portals that are already within you. It's beautiful. Like, you give all these names of archetypes that you've even embodied yourself, from like the oracle to the naughty schoolgirl, to the devoted housewife, to the destroyer, to the crone, to the, and it's just like all of these different, and I've seen you embody many of these in the practices that we've done over the years together in some of this work. And that's one of the things I'm most drawn to about you as a human, is you have really tapped into all of these different dimensions of who you are, because you are like a million different women in one. You haven't even scratched the surface of like what else is in there. And that's really exciting. And one of the points you make in the book is, because you wrote this for women, it's, if your fear is your man's going to look for someone else, he would never, when you're fully embodied, because you are every woman.
Right.
And that's what's really exciting, this hopeful message. So when I think about gifting your book to the women in my life, it's a compliment. Read Madelyn's book, because I see something like so ready for you to open up. And I hope that there are guys who have already listened to you in this episode, and hopefully they've listened to the one, from 3.5 years ago, which I'll link in the top of the show notes, will have a feeling of, I love Madelyn. I want to get this book for the woman in my life. And guys, highly recommend doing so. You will be thanked.
Let me give it a quick dry run here. I'm going to gift this to Becca, and here's what I'm going to do. Becca, we've been together for 3 years. You've seen how much I've grown and how much better of a man I am today. That's largely because of a podcast we did 3.5 years ago with this woman named Madelyn Moon. And now she has a book, and it's awesome. Will you read it with me?
Boom.
Yeah?
I love that.
There it is. Wow. All right.
It's funny because before I announced the book being released, I was thinking of doing a reel, and it was a boyfriend. I didn't fully do this one. I did a different one, but it was going to be a boyfriend that is wearing a backwards cap and walks into the bedroom all suave, and it's in slow motion. And he's like, do you want to read this with me? I was just going to do it exactly how men can give it.
Yes.
But it would be slow motion, right? It'd have to be in slow motion. But yes, read it together. I love that idea.
You did do a reel, and
I did.
It was the backwards hat guy.
Yeah.
And his only response the entire time was, okay.
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 That absolutely cranked me out. Yeah.
The Sam character is copied off of SNL's Chad. Have y'all seen that?
Yeah.
It's my favorite skit in the world. I had to fully just do it myself because I loved Chad. It's hilarious. And so I just think that Chad, my version of Sam, works so well in all of this artistic polarity work because he doesn't know what's happening or going on, but he's there. He's found himself in it somehow.
Madelyn, thank you so much. Congratulations on your new book. And hopefully it won't be 3.5 more years until we get you back on the show again.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back.
Guys, you got to be getting my free daily text messages that I've been sending out to a community of over 1,200 and growing men and women who love hearing bite-sized nuggets of inspiration on a daily basis to stay connected to purpose, living in intentionality, healthy habits, perspectives on masculinity, insights on what women want. These are free daily text messages that I send out. You can stop at any time. And I also give you up-to-date information on when I'm running events, workshops, masterclasses that you might be interested in. So I've created a link at the top of the show notes. All you need to do is click on it. It will send you to your text messages with a pre-populated message that you will send to me, and then you will automatically be subscribed. So take care of that now. It's at the top of the show notes, and you'll be seeing me, hearing from me on the daily.